It is the Rotoballer PGA show for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We're coming off a very wet, a very damp, a very uncharacteristic Cognizant Classic. Talk about throwing a few words together there that don't quite make sense. But Spence, what's cooking, brother?
That was a weird tournament last week, Byron. Like, we got a name change and we got a completely different tournament out of it with the E's. And I know that there are a lot of people on Twitter talking about whatever transpired there with a course that, I mean, you always think of PGA National and you think of the bite that you're going to get on the bear trap. And I mean, there's about 6 holes there that are just going to be as difficult as you can find. And you had some difficulty here and there. Didn't really end up getting to where most people would like it. I do have high hopes that you go to Bay Hill this week. This is one of those prototypical courses that there are a couple asks that players are going to have to get demanded. You know, you're going to have to be long and straight off the tee. You're going to have long iron proximity. If you don't have those two parts of the equation, water is in play all over the place. Big numbers are to be found. This, to me, and I've said this on other tournaments, and we have gotten wonky winners from the mix of it still, but I think this is probably the first tournament that we've had this year where I do expect one of these big names is going to take it down. It just comes down to, can we figure out which one that is?
Yeah, we've had, the thing is, it's been the theme of the year. We've had these long shot winners, but for the most part, they've beaten the majority of the favorites, have been around there. They just haven't got it done, right? Like Lowry, I think a lot of people were on Lowry, and he let them down. To me, that's not a surprise. But shocker, yes. So I think it's interesting, but yes, this course, out of even more so than Riv, I think, demands ball striking prowess. And I think if you can do that, but Spence, I found a few guys that are like in the 70s and 80s that are really good ball strikers. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
I mean, that's the thing, though, Byron. Like, it doesn't mean that one of those golfers can't win. And it kind of goes back to the point that we've even mentioned on this show in past weeks. Like, if you look at the names that have actually won these golf tournaments, let's say just remove Grayson Murray, remove Nick Dunlap from the equation. I don't think anybody has been that outlandish of a winner. My model was not on Nick Taylor when he won the Phoenix Open. I mean, that would be like the one that my model was the most off on, but Pavon has proven that he is a quality golfer. Clark's price was very far off. I mean, that was something that I was at least able to find there, and it's been difficult to hit outright winners. So if you're able to get any of these, like, you're ahead of the curve in a lot of these spots. We can have our conversations about Hideki, whether you think he has upside or he doesn't have upside. He did have upside for one of those tournaments there at the Genesis. Jake Knapp is a very talented golfer. I think Eckroat too. Like, I don't know where Eckroat was in your model last week, and I didn't get him in an outright ticket, but he had positive trajectory for upside. He was a top 30 golfer for me in that tournament. You can't bet everybody on the board at the end of the day, but I don't think he's some outlandish, like, far-fetched 100-to-1+ winner. That there were a lot of signs and there were smart people who landed on it. It's just, for whatever reason, I didn't get there because I built my card differently. But I don't think these winners are as outlandish as a lot in the space keep making it out to be.
I agree. I think it's very much the truth there, Spence, because the problem is, though, it's the guys that have been hitting these winners. It has to have been your guy. Like, if you've bet that guy for a while, then they finally came, right? Because, like, you couldn't just tell, okay, unless you go and find every single golfer that had one spike approach week at the Mexico and still finished inside the top 40, like, you're not going to be able to put all those guys on your card, right? Like, the way he held it together down the stretch was incredible. To do that is so impressive because it's hard to win a golf tournament. I was playing Showdown. I faded all 3 of the top 3 guys, Lowry, Skins, and Eckroat, expecting them to come back to the pack in those soft conditions. He just kept his foot on the gas, but it didn't really ever work out. But before we get into Bay Hill, I am rocking the South African rugby jersey. My boy EVR hit the lowest round 4 score for me at 40-1 in part of our little round 4 showdown package that I kind of popped out there. I usually retweet a bet or two with my thing there, and he cashed, and he was 8 under par through 11 holes, and then the weather delay happened, and I think he finished at 8. So he could have easily tore up the rest of that course had he finished, in that same stint of time. So we'll have to see there. But shout out to my man. He pretty much saved a very bad week for me. Spencer, I bet 15 placement bets. One of them cashed.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have as many as you did, but I didn't have any winners on that front either. The head-to-head market saved me, and we've been talking, Byron, about on a lot of these shows, and I'm happy you've joined me on the non-golf attire part of the game here. So you have a rugby jersey on. I have a Penny Hardaway shirt on.
Ooh,
so I'm back
boy.
to the basketball game again here, but no, I mean, that Eric Van Rooyen call was a brilliant decision on your part. Like, that's little things like that. Like, I always say, you don't need to be perfect every single week to find a profit. And even you can be bad in some markets, as long as you can put the pieces together enough in enough of the right spots, you can find value and you can find profit at the end of the day. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that I think we always talk about on this show. When you're only betting outrights, you're stuck in a market to where it's such a boom or bust outcome. Like, you're either going to win or you're going to lose. I know that ended up being essentially an outright to be the leader after that round of the best score for that day. But like, it's little things like that where you can find an edge. And I think it's very important to actively continue to look in the market, whether that be in matchups or placements or any of those specialty markets like you're talking about, because it only takes one error that you need to find to just recoup everything else if it's gone wrong.
Yeah. And that's the thing. At the end of the week, if I'm in the green, we're in the green. That's just how it is. And so be it. It's not a perfect science, and it's very hard to win every week. So if you are, then however you get it done, you get it done. So that's kind of my philosophy, in agreement there with you. Let's get into the Arnold Palmer Invitational, Spencer. And I've got a very difficult question for you to start off with here.
Okay.
Do you like Arnold Palmers?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't really, I'm going to say I don't really ever have them, I guess.
Have you ever had one?
No.
You've never had Arnold Palmer?
No.
Are you a fan of iced tea or lemonade?
I like lemonade. Not a fan of iced tea.
Okay. You got to try it out sometime. Sweet tea with the lemonade. It's delightful. Obviously, there's people out there that drink the spiked Arnold Palmers that I thoroughly enjoy when I'm in the mood. So those are a fun little beverage to get involved with there. But
funny enough, it was actually a difficult question for me to answer. Like, all jokes aside, I was expecting a golf question from you, and then you hit me with that, and it actually ended up being difficult. I'm trying to recall if I've ever had one before, but no, I don't think I have. So that's not necessarily helpful to this.
This is the stuff you get, Joe. We're stumping Spence with have you had this Arnold Palmer before?
You go to food or drinks, that's like the sweet spot there.
No, that's no problem. Well, I'm glad we found out that's a question I'll be holstering for the next few shows too. So we've got a fun field. We got half lemonade, full of guys that are down the 6K range and that don't necessarily deserve to be in a designated event. And then we've got a bunch of sweet tea, sons of guns at top here with Scotty Scheffler and Roy McIlroy, Patrick Cantley, and the likes all sitting in the top here, Spence. How did the slate kind of speak to you when you first originally started looking at it, and who do you think is going to really start like catching the most momentum here at the top of the board, saying above $9,500 or $9K, whichever?
When I built this, so there were a couple portions of this model. Like, there is so much win equity, and I'll give an answer here for betting and DraftKings kind of merged together into one response. Scheffler, Rory, Hovland, Oberg, even Morikawa to an extent. Like, there was a lot of projected win equity in that group there that we had. And like, for me, it kind of came down to Scotty. Like, there have been weeks, and we even talked about it a couple weeks ago when you bet Scotty to win a tournament. And there's just some of these outcomes and these performances when you run your model. It's so difficult to ignore the output that's actually being delivered by him. And we always talk about that if the putter can just be neutral, he can win a golf tournament. If it can ever be good, then he can really win a golf tournament. I think when you put it at one of these tough scoring courses, I'm hoping that we actually get a winning score that, I mean, let's say is around, 8 to 12 under par. I think if it can get more into that like 8 under range, that helps Scotty even more. Like, the fewer putts that he needs to make, the better there. But like when you look at this venue and you look at Bay Hill from top to bottom, you have to score on the par fives. That is super important. That is going to be the most essential factor that comes into play. Like 39 to 56% essentially. That's the birdie or better percentages on those 4 holes. You have 2 other holes that have a birdie rate over 17.5%. Those would be 2 of the shorter par 4s. Outside of that, par is pretty much a good score. So you have to score where you can score. You have to prevent mistakes where you can prevent them. And I kind of built a model in that capacity. Is like, where is the upside possibilities found, and who are the players that can prevent those errors in other spots? And like for me, like if you were to ask, like, who are the 3 guys that did that better than anybody else? It was Scotty, Oberg, and Hovland. Like, I think Hovland in this thicker rough and having to play out of this thicker rough is a real threat every single week. And that made the top of the board very difficult to try to maneuver through, because you have this situation right now to where I do think one of these big name golfers wins, and it comes down to exposure and how much exposure do you actually want to build. And, I went with Scotty Scheffler, full transparency on that. I got him at 7-1. That removes everything else for the week. Like I wanted Zalatoris at 35-1. I thought that was a great number. I think Hovland, that he's drifted into the 16s at some places, is certainly enticing. Yeah. Like I think a Hovland Zalatoris mix makes a lot of sense. Hovland Morikawa makes a lot of sense, but you're going to have to kind of just pick and choose your spots here and hope that you go the right direction, because there's some spots I don't want to be, but there's probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 players that you could convince me one way or another that have upside here and real value.
Yeah. I ended up just on my research stream last night, going through the top of my model and like kind of just deep diving each guy. It took me a while to like really find someone that I was thrilled about this week, though. For some reason, I wasn't like overly excited about the majority of the guys at the top. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds this week, because it's filled with these guys that each person's coming in with these warts again. We've got these elite golfers again, with Scotty and Rory both seem to be unable to putt. They're like turning into the same golfer right now, essentially. Tee to green beasts, and they can't putt. Patrick Cantley, Xander Schauffele are the same golfer. Find themselves in the final pairing every single Sunday, and they can't win a tournament. Then we got the 2 big Swedes, call it, or the Danes and the Swedes, and we got Ober and Hovland, who really haven't shown us much recently outside of Ober at Pebble. It's interesting stuff, and all these guys suit this golf course quite nicely, but I'm kind of out of all those people looking at Hovland, because just the rough the rough numbers for him out of the rough, not the rough, like they are very accurate numbers out of the rough. That's the thing with him, is he's incredibly good from long clubs out of the rough. He's actually quite bad with the wedge out of the rough, like inside 150. But at this golf course, you're not going to have any of those. When you're in the rough, you're probably going to be hitting a longer club anyway. So I think that suits his game. And we saw that ball striking bounce back at the Genesis after he took the waste management off, right? He was supposed to play that, went to his coach, worked on some stuff after getting off to a slow start, and it seems like that worked its way around. So if he can bounce back on the short game side of things, which seems to have also left him a little bit, maybe at a course that's like comfortable for him, he can really get it going. So Hovland to me is one of my favorite options, because I think he's going to be slightly less popular than the rest of the gang here, because he's not playing that well. And everyone seems to have pretty good course history here, because why? They're all strong drivers of the golf ball and good iron players, right? That's just basically the top of the board.
Well, let me say this about Hovland. It's the same argument that I made at the Genesis for why I placed an outright ticket on him. And I'm a little bit concerned that I might have been a week too early, or a tournament too early, I guess would be the best way to say that. And this might be where he ends up winning. It's the same exact argument that I made, and it continued. So he entered the Genesis with 18 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better, comes in 19th place, shoots par or better at each one of those rounds. He's now up to a tournament leading 22 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. I don't think the form is nearly as bad as the perception around him. Like even at Pebble Beach, when he came in 58th place, that was a tournament where everybody was going lower than expected in a lot of these spots. And he was just neutral in spots. And, like he's kind of putting together even par sort of rounds to where he's falling massively behind the pace of the pack there. But I think this is a golfer that's in much better form than perception. I think if you would have told me at the time that Hovland was going to drift in price from some of these numbers of where he opened, I would like another crack at this to potentially get Hovland onto the card. It's not going to happen now that Scotty's there, but to me, it really feels like Byron, Scotty, Hovland, like maybe Oberg steals it. Like one of those three feels like the winner every single time I ran my numbers. And it's a tough thing. And for DraftKings, it's a simple answer. I can just play all three of them and I can mix and match down lower.
Yeah.
And I do agree, like for DraftKings, Hovland's a very intriguing play because I do think he comes in lower ownership. Just the public perception around him is much lower. The same thing kind of happened at the Genesis to where everybody was expecting a certain performance that wasn't going to be good. And he didn't necessarily overachieve with the 19th place finish. It was fine. It was good, but it didn't give you that top end result. And we haven't gotten that recently, but I think this is a nice spot for Hovland to potentially win this contest. And even if not for DraftKings, I think he's probably one of the best plays on the board.
Yeah. Had he opened at 16, I likely would have also left off 2 or 3 50, 70 to 1 guys and kind of just loaded up on Hovland, because I still have a 30 to 1 bullet in the chamber, which I'm looking to flex when the tournament starts. I want to just jump in here real quick and mention that this golf course bakes out quite drastically as the event goes along. If you take a look at the scores, they're going to start off everyone's going to be freaking out about Bay Hill not defending itself in round 1, especially with Florida catching all this water lately. It'll dry out as the course goes. They don't want to have it baked out on Thursday because it will be unplayable on Sunday if they don't control it. But by the time Saturday morning rolls around, the conditions will still be relatively scoreable, I would imagine. And then looking to jump on some guys that are playing the AMT times on Saturday. I think Scotty won it 2 years ago doing just that. Didn't he come from like at 9 o'clock tee time on a Saturday and landed up winning the tournament, right? So you can really find some good value on a golfer that's potentially been putting poorly for the first 2 rounds, ball striking it crazy, gets off to a nice start early in the soft conditions, and then the boys go out on Saturday afternoon and really struggle, and then he's already caught up to them.
I have to be honest, doesn't this sound like your exact description there? Sounds like Rory McIlroy, first round leader, and then implosion happens at some other point later in the tournament to where this speeds up on him. But I don't know. This might be the perfect Rory spot to, like, if you ever want to bet him first round leader, this might be the opportunity.
There's multiple first round leader candidates that are totally going to eat up the softer course, and then it's going to be a disaster afterwards, right? And Rory, we saw like the putters started losing it as it got faster. Like these greens can get filthy on you quickly, and he hasn't been putting as well as people expect. So I'm kind of curious as to where that goes. I'm really scared about Rory's putting this week for him. We'll have to wait and see. Cantley played nicely a year ago. I would play him in DFS. He's going to provide you with a top 10, probably a top 5. But at $10,000, he's the third most expensive guy on the slate. We've also got an interesting slate this week, Spence. We never had the 5K range for the Genesis, right? It was with Joe at the Mexico that they had the 5s for the first time.
I believe so. I think you're correct on that. And I mean, Cantley's in this really weird spot right now. I'm curious to see where the ownership ends up landing with him. Like if I'm directly comparing though, I would rather play Victor Hovland underneath. I think an argument can even be made, like if you're just looking for pure upside that's going to develop in the spot, I think Morikawa has equal or better upside at a much cheaper price tag. So yeah, I just think where Cantley got priced here, even though my model loved him, I'm probably not going to play him. I'd rather move up to Rory or Scotty or move down to a Hovland, Oberg, Morikawa sort of a range.
Yeah, because Cantley, this is also another thing we need to chat about, Spence, is moving from the West Coast to the East Coast. It's a totally different type of golf. I don't know if Cantley enjoyed the Farmers. I think that was one of the last times. The Genesis also he played nicely at, but it's such a, you almost got to like recalibrate your whole brain and just forget everything that you've seen from these guys. Because, for instance, Minwoo Lee decided to just completely roast me in a matchup against Benny On. Minwoo went 14 under par on the par 5s this week. There was 12 of them. Like, whoop-de-freaking do. Yeah, we go. This is how my matchup went. So I was thrilled about that, like just tilting him behind the scenes. Yeah. But it's going to be fun to see how these guys roll. And then we're finally going to see the few big names show up that didn't show up at the Cognizant. So it's going to be fun to see what these guys can do. Someone that I'm kind of really in the mood for, and I placed a 33-1 first round leader on, is Cameron Young. I think that's basically a Rory Light situation. Yeah. He's played so well at this golf course. He absolutely dominates these kind of venues, these difficult scoring condition courses. He's got such immense ball speed. He's got such like high apex irons that he can stop them on a dime. He's also exceptionally good in round one. That's his like favorite stat. I think if you take a look at his round one scoring average in this field, it's 13th. He's played well at this golf course in the past, and then his stuff immediately drops off to like 53rd, and in that range for the rest of the 3 rounds. So until he bounces back a little bit in round 4. So we'll see what Cam Young can get up to. I don't mind him as a DFS player. I think he's going to be quite popular, though. I'm seeing a lot of, at $8,700, that's a very fair price. I've got him ranked 4th in my model. So I like him
5th.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's got the package and he's trending, Spence. That's the thing with him. He's starting to, 3 consecutive top 20s now that he's had, 8th, the 16th, and the 4th. Yeah. And he's had a 10th and a 13th at this golf course. So there's a lot of boxes he's checking. Recent form, course history, course fit, all of that jazz. We'll have to see. I'm kind of liking him for just a top 20 at -125.
I think when you look at this course, and this is the most interesting thing, like every single year for the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a different metric, whether that's off the tee approach, around the green. That's really been the number one thing that has delivered success for that tournament. And I think sometimes that can make the handicapping process like a little convoluted, I guess, would be the best way to word it. But It's really interesting with certain players here. And Cam Young ends up being one of those golfers to where, like, the ball striking, 2nd in my model this week. He's one of the biggest climbers in projected weighted tee to green that I ran versus his baseline. Moved into the top 7 of projected weighted tee to green versus being outside of the top 25 otherwise. So I do think that there are certain players that you throw them on specific venues. And I do think that this course for a Cam Young, we've seen it before with like Will Zalatoris at these sorts of courses. When the ball striking and some of those weighted proximity numbers end up propelling those guys up, this is where we find the success. I agree. He's going to be extremely popular. Yeah. I'm curious to see where that number ends up coming in, but I like him this week. Like there's probably 4 or 5 guys in that $8,000 range that I'm higher on, and they just all happen to be the names that I expect to be popular. So it's going to make it more complicated in a 69-man field. Like you're going to have to find spots to get different, or otherwise there's no point in playing this week. But I think Cam Young makes a lot of sense, unfortunately. Like the ownership is correct there, where I would give an argument. Maybe I end up being massively wrong in this situation. Like you talked about Min-Woo Lee, and I don't want to go all the way down the board here and we're skipping parts now. Like I've reached the point with Min-Woo Lee, and you even said it. I don't know if it was in Discord or something. And I don't know if I necessarily agree fully on the comment that he's like the most overrated golfer, whatever that was. But I think in this particular tournament, I don't think the price is as off as everybody believes it actually is. He's a fine cash game play. I understand that. You want to look for par 5 scoring. You want to look for weighted proximity outside of 200 yards. He hits both of those 2 areas. Those are the 2 positives that are going to come into play. You look at what he's done historically at this venue. He has lost, or he's averaged -4.5 shots off the tee. I don't think that that's necessarily a fluke. He's outside of the top 50 of my model. When I look at expected weighted total driving, 54th overall. The ball striking puts him 47th. He does get some sort of an upside here when you look at the proximity numbers, but this is a boom or bust volatile play that if everybody's going to jump down into this range and want to play him, like I'm 100% out. And it's funny, Byron, because I released a head-to-head at Rotoballer early in the day. Will Zalatoris -120 over Min-Woo Lee.
Wow.
Wait. Wow. We shifted that number to like -145 in the span of 10 minutes. Data Golf releases their numbers a little bit later in the day. They have Min-Woo Lee as a pretty big projected favorite on their end. The number shifts all the way back down now. So this has been a roller coaster over on BetOnline if you've been experiencing that. I think Zalatoris right now is down to, I want to say -108. It's close to -110 both ways. I think this is a really nice spot for Zalatoris. Like the value's gotten even better than when I originally had it because Data Golf pushed it down. I think this is a boom or bust spot for Minwoo to where, like, if he achieves and he performs, I'm not going to be shocked because he has some traits in the holster there that can provide those finishes that you would like want. But look, I mean, all the water, the lack of driving ability that I like or that I don't like for him on this course, like I thought -120 was value. If you're going to push that lower, like I'm in.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot to unpack there because first off, Doug in the chat, we're going to get to Harris. We're kind of just scooting down the salary range here. We'll get to Harris English here in the sevens in a short bit, but you got a matchup with two of my outrights. One of them was 55-1. One of them was a 35-1 for Willie Z. I was shocked to see 35-1 on Will Zalatoris. Like,
yeah,
I was going to bet him at 22-1. I was gonna because I feel like outside of all those other guys that are in the teens at 12s, he finished second at the Genesis and actually looked like he wanted to win the tournament. You know, like when he was in the hunt, he was looking to that. I have another question before I dive back there, Spence. Yes or no? Would you say the Farmers Insurance is a very similar kind of ball striking track to Bay Hill?
I think any time that you can remove, when you can add the ball striking acumen and you can remove some of that worry. I mean, they're different green complexes, but they're both fast. And I think you throw Zalatoris on any of these quicker green complexes, it's a pretty good 3-putt avoidance player. It's just he doesn't necessarily make putts from short. So I think when you can heighten that ball striking return from him, he's always very enticing. And that's kind of like the answer that I was giving you, Byron, when we started this show, where it was difficult because I thought Zalatoris at 35-1 was one of the better values where the numbers opened. And I'm never going to bet Scotty at 7-1 and then include other stuff on the card. Like my card is just done at that point. So I was sitting there and I was looking at Hovland at 14-1. And this is where like the situation changes. If I knew I could have gotten a 16, maybe there's this little bit of a different situation that comes into play where I take Hovland at 16, I take Zalatoris at 35, and I call my ticket there with it. But like this is a spot for Zalatoris where I know markets hate him early on. That would be the only concern I have. I don't know if you always have to wonder when markets move this quickly on Monday in matchups. And this isn't like a data golf thing with the Minwoo lead thing of showing value. Like I've seen him an underdog and massively as an underdog in every book that's open. I always worry ever so slightly that somebody's heard something or somebody knows something about Zalatoris, either health-wise, where he's at with his game, something that he's not doing well, and the numbers have moved it. Like that's one of the things that I will run later in the week to at least include some of that sharp movement in my model. But like if I'm looking directly with him and Minwoo Lee, he's never going to get to the point where he doesn't have value against Minwoo Lee against my sheets. So like I was fine jumping in early on that one, but I guess that would be my only concern, Byron, is the movement is like massively shifting against them.
Yeah, but he's a hype train. Minwoo is, that's the thing. And
well,
that's
it's fine on that one. It's like, it's less fine when, let me find you an example here. Cool. Like, I mean, I guess a massive underdog trending in that direction against Cam Young. I think we're both okay with that one. Like we both like Cam Young this week. It doesn't even matter which side of that, of the equation you like there. Like we both think Cam Young is a good course fit here. So like, I'm not going to hold that against him from being an underdog.
Who's this? Minwoo or Will Zalatoris?
This is Will Zalatoris. Okay. I see him as an underdog right now at one of my books against Matthew Fitzpatrick. I kind of like Fitzpatrick this week. I guess that's not necessarily a negative either there, but I mean, he is shifting in the wrong direction at the bare minimum.
Yeah, I mean, those are all guys that have played well here. I think Fitz has got a fantastic course history too. But my main reason I asked that question is because I don't think Minwoo played that well at the Farmers, at a golf course that I expected him to play much better at, where he seems like he might know, because I try to ask him on Twitter, why didn't you go to Mexico? Because that seemed like a golf course that you could absolutely tear up the way his game unfolds. Maybe he just plays better on these courses that he can hit 3-iron off the tee when everyone has to hit 3 woods and drivers and do that, because he played very well. Think about how he played at the Players. Like there's these courses in Florida that are like these shorter positional tracks that he tends to thrive on. I don't know. I just bet the 55 because that's going to be it for me. I might bet him a top 5 as well, but I don't know if I want anything more than that, because I think he can easily fall on his face. And now that I've spoken to you for a little bit, I'm starting to feel a bit better. I also said that Minwoo was the worst number on the board last week.
Maybe that's what the
Woo.
comment was. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't win though. I mean,
But I mean, it was close, man. But the thing is, Spence, it was like you take 3 holes out of that golf course and he's over par. Like, that's the thing, like, if he doesn't find a specific set of holes that suits his eye like it did at the Cog, he's going to have some problems this week. And if he's going to be mega owned, I'm fine. Like, I'll leave him alone. It's all
his
cool.
returns in my model are wild. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a golfer that's as high end as he is in like the par 5 birdie or better percentage, the long iron proximity. Like, those are 2 answers that you would expect him to just skyrocket in my sheet. And then out of like 69 players, it's like near dead last results in par 4 expectation. He's inside the bottom 15 and expected driving for this course. And it's kind of what I was talking about, like long, difficult tracks near the bottom of my model on these fast Bermuda greens, historically near the bottom of my model. So like, there are paths where you can find success and you could be like, okay, he did exactly what he did at the Cognizant Classic and he dominates the par 5s and he's like neutral at the other locations and he ends up fitting himself into this leaderboard in some way. But then on the flip side of that, there is this output to where he finds the water multiple times on the first day and like he comes in dead last place. Like, I really think dead last is in the realm of the equation for him. And I also think a top 5 finishes. Like, it's a really weird profile. And for a head-to-head wager, I like that spot here. Like, I'm not able to necessarily take on. I always want to try to find the miscut equity, and these no cut contests ruin that for me a little bit. But I like that volatile profile I can attack on against a golfer in Zalatoris, where I have a lot of those equal upside traits, just a lot safer of a floor in different areas there.
Yeah. I love Willie Z, and he has Darbo comparing. You see, this is why I don't like Minwoos, because Darbo's comparing now to Tiger. I'm just kidding, Darbo. I'm taking your stuff out of context. But yes, that's how these good golfers, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, they're all elite par 5 scorers. That's where they get their job done. They're birding that hole more than half the time for the most part, potentially an eagle here and there. I think Willie Z, it suits his golf course. I love him. I'm cool with him. Some other names, Spence, your boy Wyndham Clark. If you think about rough proximity, rough green regulations, ability to get the golf ball out of the rough, if you think about how he played at Quail, would you say Quail's a similar kind of a comp where you can just boom drivers off the tee, not necessarily have to hit the fairway? Ideally, you want to hit the fairway here, but if you don't, you got to be able to muscle out of the rough. He is very capable of muscling a golf ball out of the rough, which I think is very enticing for him. And he was, again, 50-1. Like, I'm cool taking that number because I can still slide in tons of other golfers that also suit that Wyndham Clark situation and see how it goes. I'm not burning a lot of my equity on a guy that's won a major, who won Pebble, who was won at Quail at 50-1 at a golf course that, I mean, this is like an ideal fit for him in a way. So
I think it's a boom or bust profile for him also. Like, if you look at what he's done historically at this track, it's not necessarily going to ring any of the bells there of a player that you would necessarily expect to find success. I guess my biggest worry comes into play in just some of these weighted totals for how I ran it for Bay Hill. Like, he had negative trajectory in my model for weighted tee to green versus his baseline. That's always a little bit of a worrisome return. Now, the one thing where he skyrocketed for me is if you throw him into this longer rough and how he does approaches from there inside of the top 5 of my model. So there's a blueprint and a reason for maybe like large field GPP contests if he's low enough owned, or, at the right outright price if you're trying to shoot for the moon there. Like, I can understand why the profile would make sense, but I'm not going to bet him this week. Currently, right now, I'd like to see where the ownership ends up landing. I don't have him in my current player pool right now. I just think he's a little bit volatile for my liking. But like, with that answer being said, all of a sudden you throw him at a couple percent owned. I mean, it's a way to get different, like, very quickly. And we'll find out more of where that's in like the next 24 to 48 hours. I haven't even updated ownership at this point. Like, I stopped doing it on Monday. I used to run it on Monday, and then you would get these massive deviations over the 24-hour span that I didn't even want to put anything out that wasn't going to be correct.
No. And dude, he's sitting between Hideki, who I think people are going to think, okay, let's go. Hideki gained 10 stroke short game to win the Genesis. So if you can do that again, feel free to do that, you Japanese sensation. But he's also sitting then beneath Matt Fitzpatrick and Cameron Young and Tommy Fleetwood and Will Zalatoris. Like those are all names other people will click than Wyndham Clark, in a DFS situation. So I could expect him to be the lowest owned of those 6 names I just mentioned.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And like, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. You take the Zalatoris, Fleetwood, Cameron Young, Matthew Fitzpatrick range. I like all those players. It may end up being a spot to where I can't fit all of them into builds because the ownership ends up being too much. And that's probably where this is going to land. But if I was going to play somebody, and this is a wild statement I'm going to say after everything I've been through with both of these 2 golfers, of Wyndham Clark and Jason Day, I think I'd rather play Jason Day than Wyndham Clark this week.
He's scrappy. I think J Day's like short game is a bit better than Wyndham Clark's when it comes to having to just get up and down. He's also very good out the rough, Jason Day. So your 2 guys are pretty handy at getting out of the rough, and I think that's a very important trait. And Jason Day drives it well around Torrey. I feel like you can translate Torrey to this venue. Narrow fairways that you have to bomb it. If you miss, there's no real massive penalty for how far you miss it by. Yes, there's some water here and there, but it's either if you're an inch in the rough, you're actually probably worse off because it's more lush. The further away you are, the better, right? So that to me just fits Wyndham Clark's profile to a T. The guy's going to be hitting it into other fairways.
I also think there's like a non-zero chance that Jason Day will withdraw again and end up at Disney World. Like, that's definitely not out of the realm of possibility of what ends up occurring here. I made that joke one time and then he actually did it the next year again. And I was like, okay, that joke is not going to happen anymore.
It's not even a joke anymore.
It's not even a joke. Like, if you're going to say factual things that can't happen the very next time. I don't know if he ended up at Disney World that time, but you never know. I mean, there's a lot of amusement areas around there, different places you can go.
Spence, speak about Disney World, speak about magic that doesn't quite make sense. How has Chris Kirk had finishes of 15th, 8th, 5th, and 39th at this golf course in the last while?
I mean, my model doesn't project him to do such. I mean, all of a sudden, in a lot of these spots in Florida, I guess it's just the general ball striking that he puts together. But like, the only thing in my model that really propelled him, I guess, like in any sense of the word, is like, like when you ran, I don't know if you ran like individual weighted proximity for this tournament, and he got worse here. Like for me, when I ran expected proximity for this course, he was a top 30 player in expectation. Like that's better than I would expect for a golfer that, if you look specifically at like 175 plus, he's outside of the top 50 in both of those 2 buckets there, from 175 to 200 and then the 200 plus range.
His long irons are very bad.
Very, very bad. And even like the weighted scoring in my model was 60th out of 69 players. But there were particular portions like inside of the top 20 for me when you throw them historically on these long and difficult tracks. When you look at the weighted tee to green inside of my model, even with that expected proximity and some of the other problems we talked about, he was still 26th overall. Like those are better returns than I was expecting for him. And he's a negative value for me when we look at him at like 6,800 or 60 to 1 in the outright market. But like, he was also a player that was about top 35 every single way I ran it. So, I mean, that's not somebody like, I'm not making the argument to play him. I'm not going to be clicking him this week, I don't think. But like, I also don't think the profile is quite as bad. And maybe there's a reason why he's found success at this tournament. Like there are a couple red flags, but yeah, he's a good scrambler that can find some upside in particular areas here.
Yeah. He's 18th and 16th for safety and upside in my model too. So it kind of makes a lot of sense, but I do have 15% on history. One of our guys, MP, asking you about Sungjae at 65 to 1, who's $8,000. Do you want to bet Sungjae at 65? I think you'll be wasting your money if you want my honest opinion. Betting Sungjae M, even when he's in good form, is always a risk because you got to just volume bet Sungjae at golf courses that he like absolutely suits when he's in good form. I don't know if he's going to automatically find his game at a golf course like this.
Part of the problem is too, and like I've talked about this a lot, Byron. I run my model from a much longer duration of time than most people. So like Sungjae is the natural answer of somebody that my model should love more than consensus. You dive this in a little bit deeper than what we've seen recently, and you would expect him to start propelling up my sheet. I didn't really necessarily get that. Like, he does have more upside for that reason, but like, I mean, he's 30th overall for projected upside. Like, that's not the Sungjae Im of what I would have gotten from him 12 months ago at this contest. Like, I bet you if I look, and I'll bring it up, I'll give the answer. I'll kick it over to you because it'll take me a second to find it. But I bet you if I look at what Sungjae's upside in a field that's, not going to be as strong, I bet you Sungjae was like a top 5 player last year at this tournament.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing. It's like even if he is playing well, I just don't trust Sungjae to win golf tournaments. I mean, when last did he win a tournament? Every time he's got in the mix, it's been the few times he has been in the mix, it's been bad. I mean, he's hardly finished inside the top 5 in the last 25 starts. He's only had 4% of his finishes inside the top 5. Like he could come out of left field and win the thing. Like that's possible. Like the world we live in right now with Hideki and things like that. But at least Hideki was semi-trending with a bit of approach play and just elite around the green stuff. There's nothing about Sungjae's game right now that's good. Like there's not anything in this field that's ranked better than like half, like he's 29th in the field in putting and he's usually a very good putter, like, so that's his best trait. His accuracy off the tee and stuff. I don't know if it's going to really reward him that much here. The way he's striking the ball, it's just, it's not going to work for me this week.
Yeah, Sungjae was inside the top 5 of my model last year for this tournament. Yeah. I mean, so that's just the difference of where we're at. And yeah. I always like going back to see any names that popped up. Like, I think it's interesting because we just had the Chris Kirk conversation. He was 14th in my model here last year. Now, he didn't end up giving that great of a performance compared to that. But, I mean, I guess there have been iterations of how I've run this model over the years to where Kirk has been a name that's at least been, in the realm of worth considering. So, I think the noticeable one, and it makes a lot of sense why, and he was, I don't know where I guess he closed at 18-1. I have it here. Will Zalatoris last year was 3rd in my model and ended up being 18-1. So it's kind of to your point. It's a much more difficult field this go around, but it's not like you also didn't have names there. Like you had Rahm, Rory, Scheffler, Xander, Homa, Finau, Young, Hovland, Morikawa, Thomas. Like
that was a big field. It's the Arnold Palmer Invitational, right? It's not the Honda. And I think that's the thing. It's Sanjay's beat up on these Shriner fields. He's beat up on the Hondas. I don't think this week. And I will say, for my safety, my long-term rating, like the year-long data, he's 7th in the model. But then for upside, like recent form, a lot more like volatile metrics, he's 17th. And I think personally, I think it's even worse than that, so that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, shockingly, like, as I said, you would expect mine to be better. Like, mine's overall for me, he's 38th. Upside, he's 30th. Safety, he's 44th. Like, just a lot of negative results there. Doesn't mean that he can't pop. It's been a course he's found success, but I would rather dip down and play some names
How
beneath
about
him.
Luke List at 110-1, like our man Michael's asking about. Yeah, I want your opinion on Luke because I have one.
I mean, my opinion on Luke List is that I never play him, so like that's usually my answer.
That's fair.
Here. I don't know. I never get him right if I'm being honest. Like 67th in my model in strokes gained total on Fast Bermuda. He's outside of the top 50 of my model when I ran this from an overall sense. I always worry that things are going to regress for him, and they haven't with the putter. Like he's all of a sudden become out of nowhere one of the best putters that there is, and I don't know where that has stemmed from. And if he continues it, that's great. But I always worry a little bit for him when you throw him at some of these more condensed tracks to where like you're going to have to find fairways and you're going to have a specific skill set. Like the weighted proximity answer, great. The long distance irons, great. Like those are all things that make sense. And he even grades well. Like the one upside thing, if I'm going to give him a positive here, if you look at pure accuracy, 58th in my model out of 69 players. And that's what you would expect. But I don't think that's a good way to run a model to begin with. I went and I looked at more of these courses where there's water in play, where you have thick rough. All of a sudden, an expectation there for accuracy, he jumped up to 21st. So I mean, I guess like as all the negatives of why I'm not going to play him, like there's those two specific skill sets that make a lot of sense for why he could find success here. So not for me ever, just because I think he gets a lot of traction around his name for what he's done recently. But I'll let you take this, Byron, and talk maybe about the other side of that.
I'm fine taking him at 110 to 1. You know, that to me is a number that is, it barely dents your outright card. You could almost bet him with Scotty, you know, like at 110 to 1, right? Like that's if you were really feeling if you were really feeling frisky. So it really doesn't do too much damage to your exposure. And I think the upside he provides, and I just keep thinking about these comp courses, about Genesis, about Farmers, and Luke List has played well at both of those kind of places in the past. We haven't seen Luke List new putting situation at this venue. It could be a complete abomination. He could gain. He had lost 7 strokes putting through the 4 rounds of golf at the Genesis last year. Through 3 rounds, he'd doubled that in gains this year. So the guy's a complete psycho. He's a bipolar golfer that we don't know what's going to show up. At 110 to 1, I'm fine. If he shows up on the wrong side of the bed, I'll write it off quickly and not even bat an eye, but he provides insane upside.
I mean, he's one of those golfers that at least has shown like win potential. I give this argument a lot, so this isn't going to come as a shock to anybody, but like to me, my long shot that I would want to consider would be like Steven Jaeger. I do think this is a decent buyback spot for him after what we just saw. All of a sudden now we've seen him drift up on the odds board. He's 7,200 on DraftKings. I think it's a boom or bust profile that you're going to get from him. But like if you look at some of the expected weighted tee to green stuff, I mean, this is a golfer that jumped into the top 10 of my model in that area. So I don't know if Jaeger is going to win one of these like designated elevated events as his first victory, but I do think he has the skill set to like top 10 this tournament.
Spencer, he's 11th in my model for upside, 5th in safety. He, for the second time at the Honda Classic, led the field in strokes gained off the tee.
Yeah.
He's driving the ball very well. He's a very good around the green player. He does a lot of box checking, and I kind of fancy him for a top 20. I think that's where I'm going to be going with Jaeger. I think the putting on these fast greens, I can see him having a Thomas Dietrich situation. And by the way, thank God Thomas Dietrich got kicked out of this tournament by the other 3 guys playing well. He would have died on this golf course. It would have taken his soul. He would have had a Florida funeral out in the Bay Hill Club and Resort there for Thomas Dietrich, because the PGA National like took, you know, like in Mortal Kombat when you punch, and it goes like all the way down to 1%. I think Dietrich was walking into this venue at 1% and like 1 or 2 bad punches, and I think the guy was going to be just toast. So
I think part of that comes down to that FSGA fantasy league. I was going against Dietrich this week, and I've been making this joke with you, Byron, every single week. Like, it doesn't matter who plays me, and unfortunately, it was Brad Thomas this week who had to take me on, and whoever I'm playing, like, you're one of 5 players max are making the cut against me. Like, my defense has been phenomenal. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue. I play Lauren this week over from Rotowire.
Yeah.
Lauren has once again, she's currently not in the playoffs if it was from record, but if you take the points, top point scorer again, she might just be the kryptonite of these leagues that you can't get by Lauren when push comes to shove.
Well, maybe she's got someone like, I don't know, Ricky Fowler, Austin Eckroyd, Emiliano Grillo. I don't know. There's names I'm not in the mood. Let's do that, Spence. In the 7K Ranger, who are you fading? Who do you not like whatsoever at this golf course?
I think JT Poston is a bad play. I think Brian Harman is a bad play. Like those were the 2 names that I was trying to find head-to-head matchups against, and I'm still curious to see what comes out. I think Jake Knapp is somewhat intriguing. Like Data Golf has Poston as a projected favorite, and I'm sitting back and waiting right now for hopefully Data Golf to move that number. And then I'm going to jump in on Knapp once that number ends up moving. But I think those 2 were like the 2 for me that were, I can tell you who the most overpriced players are in my model. So,
and I think Doug did we speak about Harris English already?
I don't think we have yet. The 3 most overpriced players for me, Harman number 1, Poston number 2, Sung Jae number 3. If we go to that $8,000 range, Luke List would be one of the overrated values also, if you're basing it off of my sheet at least.
Before I ask you about and give you my take on English, I will say that Luke doesn't grade out particularly well for me. He's like 52nd, out of 69 guys. It's more of a number grab type, high upside. My model doesn't know what I've been watching kind of thing. So screw you. Harris English is intriguing, man. He's super intriguing. He's been finishing inside the top 20 in 41% of his starts. Harris English has finishes of 9th, 2nd. He finished 2nd here last year. I think he had a bogey-free Sunday, I think, if I recall correctly. And then 26th. He's elite history for someone that doesn't quite seem to suit this course. And then his last 2 starts have been 7th and 17th, with a few better starts, on the other side of the calendar there. So I think he's a very boom or bust candidate at $7,300. I reckon he'd be quite popular because there's not a lot of good course history down in the bottom here outside of maybe Kurt Kitayama, who's the same price. But English is playing some good golf right now.
I guess that's the question I was going to ask you, because for me, it comes down to this. Like, my model seems to believe that he's a better safety play than an upside target. And if he ends up being very popular, that's usually the golfer that I end up avoiding in GPP contests. Like, if I want to fit him into cash, that's a different story. I think it's going to come down to ownership. I kind of tend to agree with you, though. I think he's going to be ultra popular.
Yeah, because the guys around him, there's Jaeger, who I think will be quite popular too. But then there's Keegan, Eric Cole. I think people are going to maybe go to Shane Lowry a little bit, but beneath him, there's not much. Ricky's been playing like complete crap. Bezzy just doesn't seem like he suits this golf course one bit. Luke List, I don't particularly like from a grading perspective. Eckroyd coming off a win. Griot, Hadwin, Rose, McCarthy. These are all names that don't inspire any confidence whatsoever. Justin Rose. Oh my God, dude. Like 3 shots out of a bunker, just hitting his ball from the other side of the fence. Complete abomination. His game's gone south since he blocked me on Twitter, so I suggest he unblocks me and starts finding better success on the golf course again, as well as his socials.
This is my friend on Twitter you're talking about right now.
Yes.
He still follows me.
Well, yeah, it's because you pegged him against Cam Smith, and I could not let that battle go unfought. And I threw a few Photoshops out there, and unfortunately, Justin Rose couldn't handle it, so and Cam still landed up losing that matchup because.
Well, I mean, his support was out of control. I mean, I've never seen.
He
so many
retweeted
people,
you.
I mean, he followed me. He followed me and retweeted me. He like. I don't know. Like, let me ask you this. Let's just take the Harris English question here, and we'll move down. Like, you can't take anybody higher priced than Harris English. Are there names beneath English that you would rather play? Forget ownership for a second. We'll just
Tom Hoagie's extremely appealing to me in GPPs. I don't think he's going to be popular, but he's been playing he made his first cut at the Honda for the first time. So that to me screams like he's playing great golf, to make a cut there. Griot's interesting at $6,900. I think he hits that 150 to 200 range is his sweet spot when it comes to approach numbers. And we're going to be seeing a lot of those numbers this week. The putting is immaculate, obviously, but the around the green play at this golf course is a monstrous concern for Griot. He's been hemorrhaging strokes around the green lately, and I don't know if he's going to keep that up again this week or not. But at $6,900, you can take a gamble. Cam Davis is intriguing to me.
Yeah,
I feel like he's one of these guys that can really dial it in. And then I'm going to say Patrick Rogers, just from a course fit situation. He's been playing better golf, kind of lost a while and got a decent history, considering it's $6,500. So he is hitting his irons quite nicely lately. And then the history at this venue is a 24th, 38th. He missed the cut the last time he played here. So it's a bit of boom or bust, but there's potential, for a $6,400 golfer to get in the mix. I don't know, Spence, who would you play? I mean, this 6K range it's tough.
It gets bad.
To use?
This range gets bad really fast. And that's kind of one of the reasons where, like, I wrote this in my DraftKings article, even like people are going to want to try to stack the top, I think. And I don't know how much equity that you're actually finding in the $6,000 range. Like, I think Griot's fine. I thought Adam Schenk was fine. I mean, this is dropping a little bit further. Like, I'd rather play English than those names if we're making that comparison. If it's an English question, like, I guess I'd rather play Jaeger. I probably agree with you that I'd maybe rather play Hoagie. I think him and English are very close. I'd like to see where the ownership lands in that spot.
But I think to answer his question, you like English. I think everyone does at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to is just ownership. Like, I know that's like the scapegoat answer, but it does matter in a 69-man field when there is a negative. My model's moving the wrong direction when we look for pure upside. That always worries me when you talk about these low $7,000 or like $6,000 golfers. These are cash game plays. Like, there's some sort of safety there, but they're not necessarily giving you the upside that you would necessarily hope for. Now, if the ownership doesn't go like nuclear, there's a different discussion to be had there, because all of a sudden that safety starts playing better if he does end up providing a top 20 for you. But I mean, I guess that there's very few people is the answer. Like, do you have thoughts on Højgaard? Or are we just like out on Højgaard at this point?
I like Højgaard in a wedge fest, but I just want to wrap back to Harris English quickly. Would you bet him at plus 115? Take ownership out of the equation for a top 20. I'm thinking.
I mean, I no, just because I don't love the price, but like, I mean, I feel like you're kind of in like the general range of where he should be there. Like 140, 150 would be more accurate for me. But I mean, like, that's kind of how I view him, as like a borderline fringe top 20 golfer that I don't exactly expect to get into that range, but I think he's going to be very close to like 18th place to 35th place. Like, I feel like he lands somewhere in that mix.
Yeah. The thing is, he finishes inside the top 40, 50% of the time. He finishes inside the top 20, 41% of the time. So he's kind of flirting with that situation, but he doesn't really finish inside, the top 5 a lot, as much as the other guys at the top of the board do. Want to wrap back to Jake Knapp. If there's a golfer that, dude, I also like personally bet him at 90-1 to start round 4, because I figured, like, he was making a charge and just lost strokes putting. Like, if the putter just got hot, we were in business. He was hitting, I think I looked at his things, 5 shots on approach gained him 0.45 strokes or better. Just dead. I think 4 of them were like 0.6. So he just knocks him dead stiff, hits it way into the air. I think he's a perfect profile for this golf course. Now, the game gets out of control when he's very nervous, but I think playing him at this price point is totally fine. I grabbed him at 90-1 again this week. I just got all these random guys, but they all fit. And if you see them win this tournament, you won't be like, how did he do that? In my opinion, I can see Jake Knapp playing great golf here.
I mean, if somebody in the chat did this, you can throw it in that you were the person that moved it. But, I was talking about Knapp against Poston in a potential head-to-head, how Data Golf had released a number where they thought Poston should have been a favorite. I was waiting for that number to move. It was like minus 110, minus 115 for Knapp. I just went to go look to see where that price had entered. Now we're up to minus 125 for Knapp. So I feel like we have maybe moved that number by talking about this on the show. And unfortunately, that's one of the dangerous things to do when you put things out in the space before you actually have a wager on it. But I agree with everything that you've talked about, Byron. Like, this is legitimately a good golfer. And it's kind of that question, and it's a much different profile of how they do it. But it was like the same question that was asked about Eric Cole repeatedly last year over and over again. And people kept expecting, for whatever reason, for the results to fall apart. This is a golfer that has distance. He has proximity.
More upside than Cole.
So much. I mean, he has a victory. He has something that Cole could never get to during any of those runs there, no matter where he ended up getting that victory. So, like, if somebody's going to win in that like 80-1 sort of range, I feel like Knapp is a very intriguing name. I kind of thought Jaeger was an intriguing name. It has to be that profile where you just have a ball striker that can keep up with Scotty for 3 days. And then you hope on Sunday Scotty makes no putts and you end up stealing the tournament away from him.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I can totally see him going out 4 or 5 groups ahead of the leaders and just going bananas, to town. I think if he finds himself in the final group in a field like this.
How bad was he in the final? Like,
yeah.
I don't know what happened. It was the most historic ball striking performance I'd ever seen before. And then all of a sudden he took his foot off the gas and he had a big enough lead that, I mean, Valimaki ended up making a run at it. And then, it's the same thing where it's like, it's tough for guys that have limited experience, even in Valimaki space. Like now all of a sudden he has entered the lead or he's tied for the lead and things ended up crumbling for him a little bit in spots. And I think Knapp caught every single lucky break that you could have had that day. Like anything that could have gone wrong didn't end up transpiring in that direction.
Yeah, it didn't go horribly at all. And I think, he also made his own luck because, I mean, he gave himself a massive lead going into the thing. And I think that's also the problem. If he was potentially tied with Valimaki, they might have gone back and forth and he might have actually played a bit better.
Yeah.
Just sometimes mentally having a lead like that. And then he's also played 3 rounds of golf with Rory at the Honda the last few days. So that's interesting to me because on Saturday he didn't play his best golf, and I think that was mainly to do with the massive crowds following Rory and him again, and they were right in the mix, like contending, and he finished better than Rory this week. Rory kind of lost the plot, and it's interesting to see what Knapp's been up to, and I think his confidence has to be 3 times the amount it was going into Mexico.
Yeah.
4, 5, 10, like after he at least managed to win it. And then this week, doubling down and just playing good golf. So we'll see what he can do. Some other names I want to chat about here quickly. Odabo saying that on my show where we do the Hacking in Hollywood, I compared Harris English to Dexter because I think, would you not be surprised if Harris English had someone in his basement?
I mean,
he looks like a serial killer, Spencer.
This sounds like the third golfer that's going to block you if this ever gets out. So I'm trying not to get blocked by golfers at this point, I guess.
Well, he looks like, I'm not saying he is, but anyway, it would be probably Tom Hoagie that he does have locked in the basement.
And I just want to comment on Michael's point of Knapp being down to 60-1 now. To me, that's legitimate sharp movement. Like that is real money and real movement. That is not public money moving that. So Knapp is the real deal.
Would you bet him if you hadn't bet Scotty, would you bet Knapp at 60?
I can tell you if it's proper for me. Give me 1 second. It probably is. My model loved him.
Yeah, mine too.
I mean, like I had him at like 48-1 as proper.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's necessarily correct. It's limited data sample size, and I hate missing the movement there, but like you got it at the number where it's like super value. And like that would have been a really intriguing thing of like Hovland 16, Zalatoris 35, Knapp at whatever you said 90. I think you hit 2 of those 3 there. So, I mean, you definitely did a good job of finding value in those numbers.
Yeah. So we'll see what cooks. I also got Kitayama at 80. I feel like if you take a look at what Kitayama's been up to, he's 8th in the field in ball striking entering this week to a golf course that he played really nicely at the last little few times. And the putter just needs to bounce back for him. If it does like my English, we got a problem. But if it does like he did last year, we're in good shape. So I kind of don't mind him. He's, again, one of these course fits, tons of distance. He's played well, obviously in the past, like he's won it. So I've got some really weird names in this range, and he's another one of them there. Any other final thoughts for the 6K range? Give us 1 or 2 more guys that you in the mood for, or are you just completely ignoring this range? What about Van Rooyen?
I mean, I don't think you can completely avoid the range. I think you're going to have to pick and choose your spots. Like Cameron Davis is a high upside, low floor sort of option if you're trying to shoot for the moon there. I think Adam Schenk is intriguing. I thought Lucas Glover had some intrigue behind his profile. Like I'm probably not going lower than Glover and Schenk.
What about Mackenzie Hughes? I know
you
murdered him in Mexico. Like you are the main. If he found out why he played badly, it was because of you. Just monstering him in matchups, which was awesome, by the way. I think this course suits him a lot better. Like scrambling, he's very good out the rough. He's $6,100.
This is a wild statement coming from me. I think I'd rather. I mean, people expect this, but I think I'd rather play Webb Simpson.
Okay, it's not wild. I get it. Webb's, but I don't know. Is Webb playing Webb golf?
No, I mean, Webb hasn't played Webb golf for
Yeah.
2+ years now. And I mean,
Yeah.
but you also, here's the problem with Webb. I mean, what is his upside at this point? Like it's nothing. I mean, like he could, I do think that there is a world where he can like top 20 this tournament on the bottom end of that, which would be great. But like, I think you're probably more so looking at a golfer that comes in like 37th place and you're calling it good there, which isn't winning you anything.
Did he not have a crazy good round here last year? Like one random good round, I think Webb did. But anyway, I just think Mackenzie Hughes from a short game perspective, like at a golf course that's difficult like this, when you can make a birdie after missing the green, call it, he's probably inside the top 10 in the field with magic beans, like him and Spieth, I think could pretty much do anything. To wrap up the show, let's chat about Jordan Spieth. We didn't even mention him at the top of the board here. He's fascinating. He's got a crazy history here, Spencer. What is going on with Spieth? I'm not going to bet him outright, but I'm sure as heck going to probably flirt with the top 10 for him.
Let me see where I have him. I'm trying to run a little thing for Mackenzie Hughes right now. I'm just looking at the par 5 scoring and the shorter par 4s because those are two areas of my model that kind of seem to like Mackenzie Hughes. Like maybe you could be onto something with him. And for the record, that's also areas of the market where like my model likes Spieth also. So Hughes in those two areas, if you just look at the shorter par 4s and the scoreable par 5s, Mackenzie Hughes is 26th in projection for me. That's intriguing for a $6,100 golfer. Now, the top of the board there would be Scheffler 1, Morikawa 2, Oberg 3, Jordan Spieth 4. So maybe there's something to Spieth at this course. And even if you look historically, like he has been magnificent here. He doesn't ever seem to find fairways, and he's able to score, and he's scoring better than anybody really over like any projection of time that you're running.
And he's come here, and I think what he's done is just scrambled his face off, and he's leading the field in strokes gained around the green, entering the week over the last 24 or this calendar year. So we'll have to see what Spieth gets up to. He also hit one of the nastiest snap hooks I've ever seen in my whole entire life from a professional golfer. He hit it into a fence that was like a fence that shouldn't have even been a fence that stopped a golf ball. Like that's the kind of fence he hit it into. It was just not even on anybody's radar. And I think he made a 4 on that final hole. I think on 18, he like hacked it down the fairway, hit it on the green, or made a crazy bogey. But it was what Jordan Spieth does. He just out of nowhere makes pars. And I think at this golf course, that's what you need to do. I think he'll do well.
Let me ask you this. I mean, it's a little bit different of a price tag here. Spieth or Justin Thomas?
That's interesting because they pretty similar in nature. I think I'm going to go with Spieth.
I think I will also.
I think Spieth, just the course history is pure over here, man. Like, and this course is very predictive from a course history perspective. If you take a look at it, it's like Augusta, and then it's in the second tier with these other Genesis, Waste Management, Phoenix Open type venues. So, give it to me there. JT's. It's a great question to ask there, Spencer. I think I'll go to Spieth because I think JT is going to be popular at 9K versus Spieth at 94.
Yeah, there might be some contrarian nature to the play there. I think he's like a top 10 player, like no matter how you want to run it. So the price tag is very fair there.
Yeah.
I would rather play Oberg if I'm like directly comparing a lot of these names. I still think Oberg has more win equity than we're getting, but like I'm curious to see where Spieth's ownership comes in because if everybody's going to take the course history answer and play him,
then I'm out.
Then I'm out in that answer there. But like, if he is not over the top in ownership, I do think there's interesting leverage that can be created.
Yeah. And Spieth in the last 18 tournaments, last 12 months, 44% top 10 rate. Sneaky, like sneaky. So I think I'm going to take my top 10 bet immediately after this and kind of run with it in that department because we're going to be getting plus money, and he's doing it about every other start. So give me a golf course with course history like that, I'm down. So that's fine for me. And then we kind of just see what happens with the rest of the ownership because you never want to be on a chalky Spieth ever,
No.
It's a horrible fade though as well because there'll be times where it looks like the tournament's over thanks to him, and then out of nowhere he'll just do what Jordan does and take a dump and get disqualified or something. But that's what happens in Jordan Spieth's world. Wild stuff. Cool. Spence, it's the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We found out that you've never drank an Arnold Palmer. Maybe we should have one this week. Let me know how you feel about them. Tell the people what's cooking in your Rotoballer world and what can be expected from you over the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, we have between the two of us and everything that both Joes are doing, Ian, Matt Miller, we have so much work that you can find over at Rotoballer. Congratulations to you, Byron, for winning the FSWA. I will note, and we talked about this a little bit before, I don't think there's a golf show that's currently out there where there's two FSWA winners on the show with one another. I guess when you do shows with Pat Mayo, that would be the other equation that comes into play there. But I feel like this is our little baby here of a show that we have. So congratulations to you there. It's been a very exciting time at Rotoballer. We have so many, between the awards that get won and the picks that are being hit and just the overall community aspect that we have from all of our writers and everybody who reads our content. I know that I speak for both of us, Byron, and everybody on the team. I can't, and we cannot thank you guys enough for all the support that we get. So, congratulations again, Byron, and
Thanks,
look forward to us continuing to crush this.
Yeah. It's up from here still. Foot is entirely on the gas still. We ain't resting. We're going to keep going. Like I've said about all of this, and just to kind of wrap back on the FSWA, it's so easy to give everything when what you do is what you love, and I think, with the community we're building, just how much passion I have towards golf, and you too, it's easy to just go psycho mode and just completely give way more time to this than it requires at the end of the day. But we love doing it. And, hopefully, the Rotoballer people that are subscribers, and even if you're not, just enjoy our free stuff that we really give our all for. So we appreciate you for appreciating us. And code Maniac, code TOFF gets you 10%. If you want to join the squad, I know our Discord's kind of under renovation. I'm seeing some really fun stuff coming up from behind the scenes there. So that's going to be really fun for everybody to see if it happens or not. But lots of good stuff going over here at Rotoballer. Thank you, Krimanal Mabuti. Have a lacquer rest of your day, everybody. And we really appreciate you showing up. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to the Rotoballer YouTube channel so we can catch you guys next time. Cheers.